Study this scene carefully.
How many questions did you get right? Can you see all the answers now?
Carefully study the individuals in this picture.
How many did you get right? Was there an improvement?
This is the amazing color-changing card trick. We start off with a standard red back deck of cards, just a normal deck. I'm going to spread those out for Sean. Now if you could please pick a random card and push it forward. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to please look at your card and show it to the camera. What have you chosen?
Queen of Diamonds.
Sean has chosen the Queen of Diamonds. I'm going to ask him to just put that back in the deck. Anywhere in there. Okay. And now, I'm going to lay them all face up. And with just a snap of my fingers, we'll see that Sean's card has a red back. That's not all surprising. What is surprising, however, is that all of the other cards now have a blue back. And that is the amazing color-changing card trick.
How many times in this video alone did you notice changes? Were you paying attention to things going on around you? Were you focusing on the discussion or the conversation? Or were you focusing on background and possible small details that you don't even realize your mind's eye is seeing and is very hard to recall when asked? This is what eyewitness accountability is all about. Noticing the changes, noticing small details. This again is not always reliable. Human error will always be part of eyewitness accountability.
I'm going to lay them all face up.
In this video alone, there were 4 changes. Her shirt, his shirt, the background, and the tablecloth. There was another change. Of course, that would be the cards changing colors. Did you catch them all? If not, how many did you get? This video by Darren Brown shows the phenomenon known as change blindness. In this experiment, it consists of 2 experimenters and random strangers from the street. The first experimenter asks a stranger for directions. So while the stranger is trying to explain, a large picture carried by 2 men disrupts their conversation. During this time, the experimenters switch places, so one of them is holding the painting and one of them switches with the map. The stranger never notices that the people have changed. This is known as change blindness.
Eyewitness accountability has been put to reliability tests for many, many years. A German professor, von Litz, conducted the first scientific test of eyewitness accountability and accuracy. He put his students to the test and then asked them what they saw and how much of it they could remember. Only 22% of the eyewitness accounts of what happened with that professor were accurate. Since 1902, this test has been tried and tried again with very similar results, regardless of the setting and regardless of the situation.
This is a very good example of the fact that memory and perception are very prone to fault. This has been known for many decades, many ages. It seems that the American criminal justice system, however, decides to ignore this science. Eyewitness testimony has identified the wrong person about 20% of the times. That means 1 in 5 people that swear that they know the truth have been wrong and have wrongfully accused people. DNA evidence has been able to prove these people incorrect. It has been used in many cases as presented in actual innocence. It is used in our case, and it freed a man that had been wrongfully accused of rape.
Walter Snyder Jr. began as just one suspect who mildly fit the description of a rapist given to the authorities by the victim, Faye Treatzer. Walter lived across the street from the victim's house as long as she had lived there. The victim was brought into the police station to view a pile of sample pictures of people in the area that fit the description. Faye discarded Walter's picture right away and wrote him off as not being the offender. Later on, she saw Walter across the street from her house washing his car in his own driveway. Since this was the first time she noticed Walter being the person who lived across the street from her, she mistook him for being the rapist when actually she was just recognizing him because he was familiar from the pictures that she was shown previously. The investigator called Faye Treatzer into the station to identify Walter as the offender, and she confirmed this immediately. No other suspects were even investigated.
Most law enforcement agencies use the same methods they have used for decades, live and photo lineups, usually conducted without a blind administrator or proper instructions. Eyewitness researchers call the standard method for lineups a simultaneous lineup, where all the lineup members are displayed to the eyewitness at once. This easily permits eyewitnesses to examine the suspects at once and determine who looks the most like the offender, which tempts them to make a decision based on relative judgments. It is stressful for victims and eyewitnesses to identify a perpetrator, and they make mistakes. Sometimes these mistakes are triggered by a gap in memory or the desire to make an identification at all costs. There are countless ways that an investigator can influence an eyewitness when administering a lineup. There is no right to the presence of defense counsel in photographic identification procedures, and hence no one to observe possible suggestiveness in the procedure. Subtle cues by the police, intentional or not, can lead to a false identification of a suspect. Fillers, non-suspects, is not in itself a guarantee that they will serve their function of helping to prevent mistaken identifications. Consider, for instance, a case in which an eyewitness described the offender as being a tall, thin male with dark hair and a mustache. Suppose now that the suspect fits this description, but some fillers in the lineup are short, others do not have mustaches, and others have light hair. In this case, the suspect will stand out to the witness as being the person who looks most like the offender relative to the other lineup members, regardless of whether the suspect is the actual offender or not.
Many people think that surveillance might be the answer. Surveillance has its benefits and its downfalls. Surveillance can help solve a crime once a crime has happened. Surveillance can identify people who have committed crime in the past and match them with databases. But surveillance cannot predict a crime. Surveillance also cannot get into people's homes where a crime may happen one-on-one. If a crime does happen one-on-one and there's not a lot of physical evidence, eyewitness testimony is usually the only reliable, quote-unquote, source that a court or jury has to use.
One possible solution that is currently working is DNA testing. DNA evidence left at old crime scenes has been able to be tested currently. It is rather expensive, which is why it's not used in every case, but in the cases that it has been used, it has helped out many wrongfully accused victims.
Innocence Project recommends that all jurisdictions immediately adopt the following policies. Blind administration. Research and experience have shown that the risk of misidentification is sharply reduced if the police officer administering a photo or live lineup is not aware of who the suspect is. Proper lineup composition. Fillers, the non-suspects included in a lineup, should resemble an eyewitness's description of the perpetrator. The suspect should not stand out. And eyewitnesses should not view multiple lineups with the same suspect. Instructions to the witness. The person viewing a lineup should be told that the perpetrator may not be in the lineup and that the investigation will continue regardless of the lineup result. They should also be told not to look to the administrator for guidance. Confidence statements. Immediately following the lineup procedure, the eyewitness should provide a statement in his own words articulating his level of confidence in the identification. Regarding the procedure, identification procedure should be videotaped whenever possible. This protects innocent suspects from any misconduct by the lineup administrator, and it helps the prosecution by showing a jury that the procedure was legitimate. Sequential presentation. Research has shown that presenting lineup members one by one, rather than all at once, decreases the rate at which innocent people are identified. Research has also demonstrated that when viewing several subjects at once, witnesses tend to choose the person who looks the most like, but may not actually be the perpetrator.